Hello team and welcome back to Transfer Winners and Losers, the last Transfer Winners and Losers before the Premier League season begins in earnest. And I'm joined by Zachary Jalab. How the devil are you? How was your weekend? Mon frere.
Yeah, very good, sir, mate. Very, very good, mate. What did I get up to? I played 11 asides for the first time in a few years. We won 2-1. Played 70 minutes. Cannot complain. And overall, pretty good. What about yourself?
I had the in-laws over, which was very pleasant. Went to a very nice Argentinian steak restaurant and ended up talking about Boca Juniors to the waiter for about 25 minutes, much to everyone's dismay at the table. And then on Sunday, I went to the Women's Euros. And we can't start in any other place but the Lionesses' victory at the head of this show. Got to congratulate them, haven't we, on their incredible achievement. But before we start to ramble on, which everyone is well used to by now, let's hear a few words from scorer of the winning goal, Chloe Kelly.
Chloe Kelly, well done. You are now a national hero. How does that feel?
Honestly, it's unbelievable. I'm so proud of this group. I'm proud to share the pitch with such an amazing bunch of girls. But throughout this tournament, we've all stuck together, and it's about the wider team, the staff, and the players all coming together to enjoy this moment. Unbelievable.
Pretty amazing to think that Kelly only played 5 games in the build-up to this tournament as well, after spending a year out after suffering an ACL injury. But let's reserve our biggest props, let's say, for the mastermind of the whole campaign, Sarina Weigman. Now, the Dutch coach has now won back-to-back European titles, the first coach to do so with different teams after leading the Netherlands to their first victory in the 2017 edition. And she's now got 12 wins from 12 games in the UEFA Women's Euros. Pretty outstanding. Zach, any more thoughts on that gripping final before we move on to the first transfer winner of this week's show?
Yeah, they played it smartly. I thought England played it really, really well, considering before this they'd kind of demolished a lot of the teams they'd faced. Sweden more so in the second half than throughout the whole game. But they knew that Germany was going to be tough. They knew that obviously it being a final and the way how Germany had made it there, beating France and so on and so forth, that it wasn't going to be a rout like the previous games had been, and they were defensively minded first. Lucy Bronze, who throughout the whole tournament was used to attacking down that flank, was much more conservative and didn't do that as often, which was smart. Beth Mead was ridiculous again. Maybe not the standout of this game. I think that was actually probably Walsh, who gave the assist for a delightful ball all the way through to Toon, who to do that in the Euro final at your home stadium in front of 87,000 people with all the pressure on you to chip the keeper like she did there, a delightful chip, was brilliant. And again, I do have to say the ball from Walsh was maybe the pass of the tournament. But Beth Mead as well, like throughout the whole tournament, I know you mentioned just the game, top goal scorer and player of the tournament. So she had a ridiculous campaign, and it was quite nice. I don't know what, depending on what channel you watched it on, but I was watching it on the BBC, and it was quite nice to hear her manager talking about, I've now got to find the next challenge for her because she's just completely accomplished what she wanted to do. Millie Bright, we also need a shout out as well. England defensively were very, very good, and she was a huge part of that, along with the captain, Leah Williamson, who we will give the final word to.
I was reflecting on yesterday, and I think the legacy of this tournament is the societal change. Is this feels like a bit of a 99 America moment, you know, that World Cup, in terms of we're a home nation that's just done that in front of 87,000 people, and I think it's really, really powerful what we've just done. And that's the start of the journey, that's what I'm talking about. But the legacy of this team was still to be written, and I walk away, my teammates walk away as a winner today, and that's the most important thing for us. That was the biggest change we could have made.
Now, the most interesting headlines this week are definitely emanating from Standard Bridge, and it looks like Chelsea might be on the cusp of rebuilding their defence finally, but for a pretty substantial cost if headlines are led to be believed. Now, according to David Ornstein, Chelsea have inquired about 2 new defensive targets, Wesley Fofana of Leicester and Denzel Dumfries of Inter Milan. And according to The Athletic, the Blues have been told by Leicester that they'll only deal with £80 million for the Frenchman, which would represent a massive profit wouldn't it, given they only paid £31.5 million for him 2 years ago, which, when it happened 2 years ago, was seen as somewhat of a risk, and it's paid off massively. Now, this, of course, would allow Brendan Rodgers to strengthen significantly in the transfer market, so you could see why the Foxes would be tempted at that price point, particularly as they have to sell before they bring in, it would seem. However, the centre-back roster does look pretty nightmarish without him. Now, Zach, after missing out on so many central defensive targets in the form of De Ligt, Koundé, maybe Kimpembe, how do you feel about Chelsea turning their attention to Fofana?
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I completely love it. I'm not going to lie, especially with the thought that it looks like Malang Sarr might be leaving. Azpilicueta as well is desperate for that move to Barcelona, if reports are to be believed. And you'd imagine that he'd just take the kind of Christensen role at right centre-back if Chelsea continue to deploy a three at the back, which it does look like they're going to. When they did use four at the back against Arsenal in pre-season, it was not pretty, that's for sure. Now, he's not exactly a like-for-like for Christensen. He's more of a ball carrier than Christensen, who's more of a distributor. But I think he'd be absolutely fine in this Chelsea system. Like, if you'd have told me we've gone through all of these targets and you're going to get Wesley Fofana at the end of it, I would have snapped your hand off. Obviously, there is maybe the concern about his injury. It was a long-term injury and how he's come back from that. But I think if all is to be well, then it's a deal you have to get done. It's been reported that Chelsea are hoping to drive down his fee by possibly part exchanging on some players. Leicester at the moment are still the only club not to have signed anybody yet, even though Brendan Rodgers did come out, I think 2 days ago or yesterday, to say that Leicester would not be selling Wesley Fofana. He also said that the week before they sold Ben Chilwell to Chelsea as well. As for some of the players that could end up going to Leicester, there's a few. I mean, we've seen rumours that Callum Hudson-Odoi is being interested by Newcastle. That could be a position that they'd want to pick up on. Billy Gilmore seems like his time at Chelsea might possibly be coming to an end. There were rumours about him going to Everton. Ethan Ampadu is a guy who's very, very versatile and someone that Brendan Rodgers could get a lot out of. Pulisic as well, maybe. I don't know. With the new owners, that might be a little bit tougher of a sell. But whoever it ends up being, I think Chelsea would then still have to spend a decent amount of money as well. It's also worth noting as well that Fabrizio Romano mentioned that Chelsea have still not given up on Gvardiol from RB Leipzig either. Another centre-back who'd be fantastic if they were able to bring in. Bringing obviously these two in would be a ridiculous way to end the transfer window from where Chelsea first began. Fofana is obviously right-footed, Gvardiol left-footed. Would easily confirm that Tuchel wants to stick with that three at the back system, and I think would suit the three at the back system really, really well. And obviously, you've still got 37-year-old Thiago Silva, who maybe could swap with Koulibaly at the centre of defence. At the moment, it looks like Koulibaly is playing on the left and doing a pretty good job of it during pre-season, but he could easily fit into that middle role. You think he'd be right in that middle role, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, if you finish the summer with Thiago Silva as your depth play, then you're in a pretty good position, aren't you? Although, like you just intimated there, highly unlikely that you get Gvardiol and Fofana in one transfer window. Maybe it happens over the next 12, 18 months, and that is your long-term defence, and what a defence that would be. But yeah, I think that's very, very ambitious. Although, I think £80 million probably fair for Wesley Fofana. That's what Leicester got for Harry Maguire. Probably put him on a sort of similar pedestal, don't they? Rightly so. I think he's maybe got a higher ceiling, still only 21, has recovered from that injury pretty emphatically, returned for the last 7 Premier League games of the season, didn't he, and helped push Leicester into the top half of the table. Looked good to go, looked like he was firmly over that fibular fracture. So, yeah, right target, right sort of price. Let's see if any deal gets done. I'm not sure how keen Leicester will be on any of those players that you mentioned. Callum Hudson-Odoi aside, maybe, what an option he could be. Although Harvey Barnes is better on the left. Can Hudson-Odoi play on the right? I don't know. Time will tell. Let's move on to Denzel Dumfries then, Chelsea's other principal target, if these transfer rumours are led to be believed, with the 26-year-old putting up a very impressive attacking campaign, let's say, last season as Inter Milan finished runners-up in Serie A. I think just 21 starts, but 9 goal contributions. And if Calcio Mercato are led to be believed, he's now available, despite that impressive debut campaign, for quite a modest €40 million, or around £33 million, which is unsurprising given a third of his league appearances were from the bench, and Inter Milan are in dire need of cash. But Zach, what do you think of this move? Because even at that price point, we have some doubts, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, statistically, like, he's not the greatest of defenders. Obviously, if Chelsea are playing a three-at-the-back system, defence isn't necessarily the thing that he's going to be there for, but it's still going to be needed. He's the bottom 10% for interceptions, blocks and clearances. He's a league average presser. We know Thomas Tuchel likes his team to press. He's not really the most progressive passer either, which doesn't really fit that Thomas Tuchel side. But he is a huge threat in the opposition's box. He's a little bit like Marcus Alonso, to be honest. And I think if I say that, a lot of Chelsea fans would wince, especially for the price of possibly 40 million euros. But yeah, his all-round numbers really aren't that impressive. I think overall he'd arrive as a backup to Reece James at right wing back. There were rumours that he'd be starting, and maybe Reece James goes at right centre back, which is just such a waste of Reece James's attacking potential and what he does. I think he's an absolutely fine and a great right centre back in that three at the back system, but he's so much better on that right flank going up and forward and back. But if Azpilicueta does move on, that is an option for them if Chelsea need to play at someone at right wing back. I will also note that Ruben Loftus-Cheek has been operating there in pre-season and operating there pretty well. So that could be the idea. But overall, going into next season with Alonso and Dumfries as the backup wing backs isn't the worst thing in the world to me anyway.
No. Yeah, I think you've covered that pretty well there. Let's move on then to our transfer losers. But before we do, actually, shout out to Fulham for completing the Leno deal for £8 million. I think that's an extremely good price for a keeper of that calibre. And obviously, rumours surfacing this morning that Chelsea are ready to throw the kitchen sink at Frenkie de Jong once more, given the protracted nature of his transfer, let's say, to Manchester United. But we wanted to give you a break from that saga at home. I don't think we can bring ourselves to talk about Frenkie de Jong again, as long as it remains speculative. When something does happen, we'll bring it back. But as for now, let's move on to Newcastle. And it's a difficult one this week, like I said at the top of the show, as there's not been a lot of fresh business conducted. Although Newcastle have had a very cheeky £40 million bid kicked out by Leicester, for James Maddison.
Yeah, indeed they have. After failing to land Anthony Gordon or Hugo Ekitike, who joined PSG in the end, it seems like the Magpies have moved on from youngsters who have huge potential to some more Premier League established stars. I think Maddison went under the radar last season. Maybe previously some people would have said he'd been slightly overrated and so on and so forth. But last year, he was fantastic. He was one of Leicester's most important players. And supposedly, Leicester are holding out for £60 million, which might be actually a little bit cheap considering what he did for them last season. 20 goals and assists and just 28 stars. His most productive season in the Premier League to date. Really, really impressive. And Brendan Rodgers made his thoughts on the matter pretty clear when he told Sky Sports that the bid might just cover 3/4 of his left leg. That price, obviously the 40 million that they put down. It also appears that they might be after Harvey Barnes as well, Chris. Not a bad signing though if they were to go and get him.
Yeah, which is even more confusing as Alan Saint-Maximin has that left flank nailed down, right? I'm not sure how plans on deploying James Maddison either. I'm confused by both of these potential moves, let's say. James Maddison obviously flickers between an 8 and a 10 depending on who he's playing with. And how more often than not plays a 4-3-3. Maybe he'd play him on the right-hand side as an Almiron upgrade at a push. I suppose he could play him in a midfield 3 as well, but that might inhibit some of Bruno Guimaraes' play. We saw how influential he was in the final third towards the end of the campaign for Newcastle. And if he's going to line up with James Maddison in that midfield, then he would probably be operating as the DM. If Joelinton stayed there, they might go and get a lights out DM so they can have Maddison, Bruno Guimaraes in the same midfield, and all of a sudden that is looking like a top 8 midfield 3, but it doesn't seem like a next step. They seem a million miles away from that. So yeah, I can't see him being overly enamoured with the move either. Like, Newcastle's sporting project might be big, it's ambitious, but it's probably 3 or 4 years away from being on par with Leicester's, I would say. Although Leicester, I did tweet the other day, are 1 or 2 wrong moves away from falling by the wayside, it would seem. Like losing Maddison and Tielemans in the same summer could be catastrophic. As well as £80 million Wesley Fofana, unless they've got some elite, top-tier sort of replacements lined up, which, again, not sure of. Brendan Rodgers' record in the transfer market has been patchy for Leicester. But yeah, ultimately, this feels like Newcastle just shouting Leicester a bit, like they did with Burnley and Chris Wood. Obviously, they saw a club above them at that point in the Premier League table and thought, we want to leapfrog them. What can we do to sort of unsettle them, to weaken them, to make them a more inferior proposition? And I think they're doing that with Leicester now. I think they probably see Leicester as the next step in their progression, nicking one of their best players. Obviously, a great way of achieving that, but unsettling them, maybe the next best thing. So yeah, that's what I think of that. What do you guys think of those potential moves at home? Let us know in the comments below, and I'll get back to you in the first hour. As always, we're not doing a moment of the week this week, because it's pretty obvious. The Lionesses, they take the crown, of course. But we are going to plug our Fantasy Premier League, Zach, because we have created a league, haven't we? The code is on screen right now. So come join, see how many of Team FD you can take down, and we'll formulate a plan closer to the season with regards to prizes and forfeits. Zach, let's whiz through both our teams then in 60 seconds combined. Who have you gone for and why? Who's your star player?
Well, I've got a few star players. Harry Kane and Mohamed Salah, I've got them both in my team. I kind of mentioned this on We Need to Talk. I felt like those two just are fantastic, especially with Salah. We know what he's about, and he already looks like he's going to rip apart the season. Gabriel Jesus, I've also got up top, only 8 million. I think he's a guy who's going to be getting goals and assists. I think you kind of need him in your side. Not to mention as well Mason Mount, Grealish, Bernardo Silva, and then my defence features Zinchenko, James, Digne, Alexander-Arnold. So guys who will hopefully be having a good season in an attacking sense. What about your team, mate?
Yeah, I mean, my big overpay in my side is Son at 12 million. And in order to get Son, Kane, Salah, which I have, you have to get some bargains in, don't you? And I've gone for Nico Williams. I think he's a great bargain at £4 million because he's going to play a lot of minutes, isn't he? And if they play with 5 at the back, then he is going to be in, progressive areas of the pitch, expected to put up goals and assists in Steve Cooper's side. I've also gone for Declan Rice on the bench at 5 mil, another one who enables me to bring in these more expansive players. I think a lot of people poo-pooed that idea on Twitter, but he got around 100 points last season and he only got 5 goal contributions. But with Declan Rice, he's going to play every minute, and you hear rumours coming out of West Ham that he's the best finisher at the club, that if they sign a defensive midfielder, and they went for they've gone in for a couple of targets, haven't they, particularly the guy from Lille, that they will push him up the pitch a little bit. He's going to be the most advanced midfielder, which was Souček probably last campaign. So I back it in him. I back him, to maybe get between 8 and 10 goal contributions this season, which would probably put him at around 130, 140 points. For 5 mil, that's not a bad pickup if it lets you get the big boys on the pitch. But yeah, Martinelli and Grealish, I think at 7 mil could be bargains as well. But let's see, if they're fitness permitting, minutes permitting, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, let us know about your teams, your star picks, your bargain picks. I'm more interested in that sort of stuff in the comments below. And me and Zach, like I said, will hit you up. But I think that's about it on FPL. Let's wrap the video there then, Zach. Anything to plug across Football Daily, Euro Football Daily, the podcast, the Snap, the TikTok?
Well, why not check us out on TikTok, Snapchat, all of that good stuff, the social platforms. And if you haven't already, check out the Sunday Vibes that went live yesterday, where we did our pre-season predictions. It was very juicy. Nice. Yes, like this video, subscribe to the channel with notifications on. And in case you forgot, it's coming home, isn't it?